This is brought to you by
Flamingo Paint. Superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.
Sasso insecticide spray and coil.
Oh, hello and good evening. Welcome. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live from news about Desawe Kanda, also live on TV3 Ghana on Facebook and on DSTV channel 279. We're all across the world on 3news.com. I'm Alfred Ocansey. Tonight, we turn our attention to reactions from the sectorial unions and think tanks to the 2026 budget presented by the Finance Minister, Dr. Kasiela Toforsim, beginning with the education sector. We'll also touch on ECG and matters arising. Well, the minority in Parliament addressed a press conference earlier today. Touch on it as well. Some developments regarding the security service, and government has offered bereaved families the chance to replace victims of the Elwak Stadium stampede in the military recruitment process. Stay with us. We have details of this and plus some reactions as well here on Ghana Tonight. That's all for Ghana Briefs.
Families of those who lost their lives in the Wednesday military recruitment stampede have been asked to present a family representative to replace their deceased relatives in the recruitment process. Speaking at the residence of one of the victims in the Central Region, the Deputy Defense Minister, Ernest Broja Jemfi, said the President directed that an opportunity be given to a family member of each deceased person to take their place.
These 6 young female potential recruits had made it. They were qualified to the stage where we were to inspect their documentations and also do body selection in order to assess their fitness level. And for the family to lose them under the circumstances as we have, His Excellency the President has directed that we give the opportunity to the family to replace all these 6 dead persons.
The government has extended the age limit of regular recruits into the Ghana Police Service, Immigration Service, Ghana Prison Service, and Ghana National Fire Service to 30 years. Addressing the media, the Minister for Interior, Mohamed Muntaka Mubarak, announced that the age limit for artisans has also been increased to 35 years.
Graduates and professionals and even ordinary recruits will move the age to 30. And for craftsmen, for the first time, probably for a very long period of time, for the first time in many, many years. Now we are focusing on craftsmen, where we are looking for electricians, we are looking for painters, we are looking for carpenters, we are looking for fitters, and what have you. And the qualification there, BEC, MVTI, City and Girls, and the others.
The minority has stated that government's fiscal policy has crashed, accusing the International Monetary Fund of sleeping on its job and allowing government deviate from earlier arrangements. Former Finance Minister Dr. Amin Adam says the cedi should have traded at 8 cedis to $1, with billions spent on forex interventions.
2026 budget does not yet provide the scale or structure of investment needed to shift Ghana from the short-term stabilization to long-term productivity-led growth. This propaganda management of the economy is becoming far too much at best. Merely repeating an untruth does not make it the truth.
The Minister for Lands and Natural Resources has handed over 230 water pumps seized from illegal miners to the Ministry of Agriculture. The equipment will be distributed to farmers to boost irrigation and support food production. Meanwhile, the Lands Minister issued a stern warning to illegal miners who attempt to confront National Anti-Illegal Mining Operations Secretariat NIMOS officers.
We are going into this year very sure that for those who have decided that they want to destroy our water bodies and forest reserves, get ready, we are coming after you. And the message is clear. If you see NIMOS in every corner, try messing up with them. Try it. The whole force of the Ghana Armed Forces and the Ghana Police Service will be brought to bear. Because we mean what we say.
President Mahama has revealed plans by a private investor to establish a ferry service in Tema that will serve countries along the West African coast. Speaking at the commissioning of phases 1 and 2 of the Tema Port Expansion Project, he said the ferries are expected to transport vehicles, passengers, and goods between Ghana and other West African states. He says his government will provide full support to ensure its success.
If you go to Europe, you know what the ferries are. You can drive your car onto a ferry and then it will sail to Apapa in Nigeria and you drive off and go straight into Lagos or wherever you're going. It can take trucks carrying cargo, it can take passengers. And so if we have that service, it would help supplement sending cargo always by road. You can go by ferry with your goods to Nigeria and avoid all the checkpoints where you have to pay small VAT to all kinds of officers.
More news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live as well on 3FM 92.7, also on TV Ghana on Facebook, and on DSTV channel 279. We're all across the world on 3news.com. It's always brought to you by Flamingo Paint, Simply Superior, Spray and Coming up next on Ghana Tonight, we're getting some disturbing news we've been monitoring for the past few hours gone by. Reports of a head-on collision that involved a truck and a trotro, that is a public transport vehicle that we understand at Konongo Kumasi Accra Road. That's on the Konongo Kumasi Accra Road. The incident happened specifically at a town called Bonfa. Now, this happened in the early hours of this evening. Now, the victims have been transported to Konongo Government Hospital. According to eyewitnesses, the commercial bus driver was overtaken, which led to the crash. And these are videos we got from eyewitnesses of this unfortunate incident earlier today. And we understand a number of the injured persons have been rushed to the hospital and are currently receiving treatment. We are not unsure as yet if there are any persons who died as a result of this accident. A correspondent in the area is en route to the hospital where these accident victims have been rushed to, receiving treatment as we speak. But that's the information that we're getting right now here on TV3, and it's one we've been monitoring quite closely here on Ghana Tonight, and we'll touch base again if there are any updates on this one. But stay with us. But coming up next year, we'll dive into how unions and think tanks are tearing into the 2026 budget, starting with the big question facing a number of the sectors, and we'll zoom into the education sector. But let's start off with the general overview. In fact, the Finance Minister, Dr. Kasiela Toforsen, has been also projecting into how the fiscal year 2026 will be. But earlier today, the minority criticized the government's fiscal policy, accusing the IMF of neglecting its oversight and allowing deviations from prior agreements. The former finance minister, Dr. Amin Adam, adds that the cedi should have traded at 8 cedis to the dollar, despite billions spent on forex interventions. Yeah, except at the press conference earlier today.
We were expecting that this budget would deliver hope and positive direction to our economy following a year of inactivity. Unfortunately, it is another budget used to apportion blame. 2026 budget does not yet provide the scale or structure of investment needed to shift Ghana from the short-term stabilization to long-term productivity-led growth. This propaganda management of the economy is becoming far too much at best. Merely repeating an untruth does not make it the truth. Is it not curious that the much talked about Nkoko Nkitinkiti was just launched this week, in spite of the fact that the 2025 budget provision for it since March 2025? A clear example of how this government is struggling to implement its priority programs. And let me use this opportunity to caution that the Harmattan season has just started in some parts of the country. And we don't want to hear stories later that the chicks have been killed by the Harmattan. Today, the 24-hour economy policy is a confusing mix of policy ideas with no clear implementation arrangements. The same youth who were told they would have shifts to work once this government comes to power continue to roam the streets without work, while farmers and traders complain of poor sales due to weak demand. The minister, members of the press, also conveniently fails to mention the disastrous auction performance throughout 2025. Market participants have delivered a devastating verdict on the administration's economic management through their systematic avoidance of government securities. Out of 45 auctions conducted this year, an unprecedented 25 have failed outright, a failure rate exceeding 55%. That reveals not just market skepticism, but active rejection of government paper. With the significant billions of dollars of interventions, we expected the rate to be around 8 cedis to $1. But the market's muted response reveals a sophisticated understanding that currency strength cannot be purchased. It must be earned through sound economic fundamentals. We can therefore, in conclusion, describe the 2026 budget, the Galamsey budget, as growthless, jobless, and minimalist budget. It contains only cosmetic rhetorics presented by a crawling government.
Oh, that's a former finance minister, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, there. But this is exactly what the finance minister, Dr. Kasiel Atoforson, said about the cedi rebound and also what's going to be done to sustain the gains of the cedi going into 2026, the fiscal year. Take a look.
Mr. Speaker, through decisive leadership, bold reforms and resilience of the Ghanaian people, we began to turn the tide. Mr. Speaker, the result speaks for itself. In less than a year, we have recorded a strong economic growth, falling inflation, a strong and stable cedi, improved external buffers, restored fiscal discipline, deepened fiscal reforms, strong and independent fiscal oversight, lower borrowing costs, significant debt reduction, restored investor confidence, expanded social protection, better debt management strategy, and massive infrastructure development. Right, Honorable Speaker, this progress is the fruit of sacrifice and discipline. Ghanaians tightened their belt, businesses adapted, and government stayed the course. Barely a year ago, our economy was uncertain. Today, the cedi in your pocket is stronger. Prices are reducing, and new opportunities are emerging across agriculture, industry, and technology.
That's the finance minister there. Bringing a data scientist and public policy analyst, Alfred Ocansey, is joining us on Zoom. Alfred, thank you for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. I mean, you listen to the finance minister as well. The major objective for this budget is consolidating the gains in a number of areas. It was on 3 thematic areas that he put out. We're still analyzing the details as we have it. But from what you have seen and heard, does it point to the achievement of the objective of consolidation within the next fiscal year, 2026?
Absolutely. I think there's definitely some progress that's been made in terms of the fiscal performance, right? When you look at the fact that even the government's own projection of the fiscal balance, where it was supposed to be and where it has been so far from Q1 to Q3, I think that gives some indication. I'll caveat that by saying that there's also significant underperformance in the execution of capital spending, and that is also contributing to the overall fiscal balance, right? So, for example, between the first 3 quarters, the projected spending on capital expenditure was supposed to be about 26 billion cedis, and we only spent about 11 billion of that, in spite of the big push that's supposed to be underway. So that generates a bit of concern in terms of the execution. But the minister, explained that what they've been trying to do is they've been trying to reprofile capital expenditure so they can focus on more strategic assets, and also as they were doing the audits of the areas. So hopefully, with all that clearing up, we should be able to get a bit more clarity on what the trajectory of capital spending would be. But I think as a whole, the budget does provide some confidence in terms of the plans that the government is trying to do in terms of fiscal consolidation. I would also say that we did see revenue in some areas underperforming. Generally, along a number of the revenue lines, they were underperforming. So I consider that, and I think about the fact that we are also scrapping COVID levy. That posed some challenges for government in terms of being able to make sure that we're able to meet the fiscal consolidation goals. But I think overall, there's definitely positives, and it seems to be on track. The government seems to be on track.
I see. We're talking about fiscal consolidation, job creation, and accelerated economic transformation, strengthening security and social sectors. Those are the 3 thematic areas, the broad areas that this budget, the 2026 budget, was hinged on. But one thing that the finance minister said, which has been a subject of some debate and analysis, is the revenue of ECG. Alfred, it says what? 90% revenue ECG is now posting. And we've been drilling into this, and if you've been doing quite some work in that area, but let's take a listen to exactly what the finance minister said. And then we would take a look at what we know, okay? But this is it.
An electricity intensification program will extend connections to all remaining homes and businesses, ensuring that no Ghanaian is left without power. Mr. Speaker, the rollout starts in Volta, Oti, Savannah, and Central regions in 2026, expanding nationwide by 2029 with off-grid solar to remote areas. Mr. Speaker, electricity will be universal, reliable, and life-changing. Right, Honorable Speaker, we will undertake feasibility studies on mini hydroelectronic potentials of the Volta, Red Volta, and other southern river systems. Mr. Speaker, through these coordinated reforms, from reviving the upstream oil and gas sector, securing gas supply, renegotiating IPPs, building a national power plant, expanding rural access, and reforming the operations of ECG, we are securing affordable and reliable energy for individuals and businesses. We are not just keeping the lights on, we are lighting the path for industrial transformation, job creation, and inclusive prosperity.
Well, so, and Alfred, listening to the finance minister make this point about how much now ECG is making in terms of revenue on a monthly basis, and the emphasis on a monthly basis, and also, at least we do know what the PwC report put out, this was sometime last year, that ECG was making much more money than what they were declaring. I mean, 1.3 billion on the average. In fact, the last quarter, some 1.5 billion cedis on a monthly basis. Now we're hearing from the finance minister talk about ECG's revenue improving by 90%. Have you looked into this and juxtapose this with the PwC report as of last year? I mean, how do we make sense of this?
Yeah, so I think there's a bit of a confusion from my perspective in terms of this 90%, right? We already knew that ECG was making more money than it was declaring to the cash waterfall mechanism. So when PwC did the audit, what came out was that ECG was making on average about 1.3 billion cedis in revenue in 2024. So even when you look at it, like in the last quarter of 2024, there were certain months where ECG was making over 1.5 billion cedis a month, right? So on that score, when you compare that to the minister said as of August 2025, it was about 1.7 billion monthly. So that wouldn't be 90%. What has happened is that because the government has been more strict with the cash waterfall mechanism and making sure that ECG actually adheres to it, what is happening now is that there's more declaration to the cash waterfall mechanism, right? So that is where the confusion is. So it's not that, to me, it's not that ECG's revenue has increased by 90%. If you do the math, ECG's revenue has actually increased by about 30% between 2024 and now. But what is happening now is that instead of ECG before keeping some of the money and using it for, God knows what, now there's a more transparent process. All the money comes into the pot as designed, and then the money then is distributed to everybody else in the value chain. So I think that's where the confusion is. So I don't think, like I said, I don't think it's 90% increment in the revenue, but what it says is that there's increased compliance with the cash waterfall mechanism. So there's now more liquidity available to distribute to value sector, value chain players, which I think is very important and is very commendable. It's just that I don't think the revenue itself has increased by 90%. I also always want to make the point that when it comes to ECG, we have to be careful with the comparison and the praises around absolute increases in revenue, and think about the losses themselves, right? Like what is called the aggregate technical, commercial, and collection losses. What is that looking like? How much of the power ECG buys that it cannot sell, or how much of it does it sell that it cannot collect? Those are the important efficiency measures that we have to be focusing on. So far, we haven't really seen any data year to date about how that number is looking. Last we heard from last year was over 40%, but we haven't heard how all the structural changes that the minister and ECG have been putting in place, to what extent that is causing a decline in the ATCC. But yeah, so that's what I would say on the ECG front.
I see, and quickly, before I let you go, Alfred, so we know the COVID-19 levy is going to be off our books after this process is exhausted in Parliament. Some 3.7 billion cedis is going to be taken out, at least based on what the finance minister said, in terms of revenue. If you look at the appendix in this budget, in fact, in the 2025 budget, and then also the 2026 budget that was presented yesterday, we clearly see that the revenue lines have not really performed as expected. I mean, talking about corporate taxes, and the other tax handles as well. So to the extent that a number of the revenue lines did not perform as expected, and then we're scrapping COVID as well, which is taking some revenue away, but we're seeing government expenditures going to be increased by some 12.4% going into 2026. Because of the big push and other projects government would have to finance. Does it raise any concern for you, or the details of the budget answers the question about where the revenue is going to be coming from?
Yeah, so I think when you look at the annual tax performance reports that the Ministry of Finance publishes, I think COVID-19 levy is actually one of those that that was usually performing very well, and that's because it was tied to VAT, right? So it was performing very well. So it'll be interesting to see how that revenue line gets replaced. My concern is that because the rest are underperforming, that might create a challenge going forward. But the government seems to be confident that some of the VAT reforms and simplification that it's doing would be able to help with that. That said, one of the other elements that is interesting is the finance minister's idea of the tax refund account, right? Because remember when the e-levy and all the other taxes were scrapped, one of the measures that was supposed to offset the revenue gaps was that we would now have the tax refund accounts instead of allocating 6% of the tax revenue to it, it will be 4%. The data now from year to date is showing us that it's actually still 6%. So I'm not sure, even though the budget for 2026 still says it's going to rely on the 4%, it'll be interesting to see how the turnouts actually be and whether we would be able to replace the COVID-19 with some of those windfalls from that. But I think, the government seems confident that its VAT reforms is going to make a difference. So we'll see. At the end of the day, we always wait till the mid-year review to see how the government's fiscal plan is progressing.
Certainly. Alfred Ocansey, thank you so much for joining us as a data scientist and also a public policy analyst joining us here on Ghana Tonight. But let's just stay a bit further on the budget. The reactions, some labor unions have also been reacting to the budget. Let's start with the Trade Union Congress TUC. And this is what the Deputy Secretary General has been talking about. Take a look.
Writing off Cocoa Board debts and recapitalizing Cocoa Board. We would have been seen to be positioning Cocoa Board on the right pedestal for it to boost production. I'm also happy about the aspect that the minister talked about, that government has acquired 200,000 hectares to boost cocoa production. If we are able to do this, there will be no doubt in anybody's mind that Cocoa Board will be moving towards the achievement of 1 million tons of cocoa. The existing companies must be helped to sustain their operations. Once you get that one on the ground, moving, and workers are also retained, and you add more, I think that will make economic sense. But if you want to add on to weaker companies that are struggling to even reopen, they want recapitalization of their companies from government. And we know that government is also working around the clock to address these concerns.
Industrial and Commercial Workers Union, ICU, talking there and sharing their views on this particular budget and matters, right? But let's go straight into the education sector. This is what the finance minister said in terms of the allocation to the education sector, and we'll get some reactions from stakeholders within the education space. Take a look.
The Speaker, I now take you to education. The Speaker, we recognize education as a transformative tool and a catalyst for social mobility. We will deepen our investment in education, especially on infrastructure, to cultivate a generation of informed global citizens. Right Honorable Speaker, we have developed a program, a 2-year program, to end double track. Mr. Speaker, education is the ladder by which nations climb to prosperity. And for Ghana, the ladder must be strong, wide, and within the reach of every child. Government is embarking on a bold and transformative initiative to upgrade, modernize, and expand access to secondary education across the country, ensuring that every Ghanaian child, regardless of background or location, can learn, grow, and succeed. Right Honorable Speaker, many schools are overcrowded and others lack the infrastructure or resources to deliver quality education. As a result of this, the previous administration introduced the double track system, which have adversely affected the academic calendar and the quality of our education. Mr. Speaker, government is rolling out a 2-year program to end the double track system in our secondary schools. We will expand infrastructure, enhance quality, and improve access. This program will eliminate the double track system and ensure that every child can attend school full-time in dignity and in safety.
As the Finance Minister, Dr. Kasiela Tufor there. Now, this is it. 33.3 billion allocation to the education sector. It talks about the phasing out of the double track system. Here's the breakdown. In the main budget, the headline allocation of 33.3 is what you heard yesterday. The main budget has some detail. 2 million monodecks will be provided. New textbooks for 4 million basic learners, school feeding program expansion, and government, from what the finance minister gave, in the main budget, the full details, kindergartens, primary, junior high schools, a number of them will be built, and then bungalows for teachers and toilets as well. And this is a major part of what they made, the promise that they made to teachers as well. The teacher, the concern also about the housing, that's the housing for teachers, low housing cost, and then the free housing as well, the teacher judging that they talked about. And then also the 4.2 billion allocation to senior high schools to end double track in 2 years, complete 30 abandoned E-blocks, upgrade 30 Category C schools to Category B. Now, this is not the only one. Quite a number of things as well in the sector. No fee stress, 537 million allocated to no fee stress. That is the payment of the fees for, as academic fees for first-year students across the tertiary institutions, 25 million free for persons with disabilities in the tertiary institution, those who gain admission to the tertiary institution, 207 million Ghana cedis allocated for teacher allowance. Dr. Peter Parteanti is Executive Director of the Institute for Education Studies, joining us on Zoom right now. Dr. Anti, 2 years, in 2 years, this double track will be phased out. And it's one area that you have been quite passionate about, and hearing this captured in the budget as well, and knowing that a number of these E-blocks have not been completed. This is an intention captured in the budget. How are you going to track to ensure that this is implemented?
Thank you very much, Alfred, and good evening to your viewers. First and foremost, I would want to say that this year's education sector budget looks promising. There seems to be a deliberate attempt to improve infrastructure, increase access, and ensure that there's equity distribution of educational resources within the education sector. And for that, I would applaud the minister and the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Education for the thoughtfulness they have shown towards the sector this year. It's also refreshing to hear that the double track has been planned to be phased out in the next 2 years. We all know that the double track was a short-term measure to ensure that the number of students that were supposed to be in secondary schools were given the opportunity to do so. And within that period, we were supposed to expand infrastructure and ensure that we are able to accommodate all the numbers as they enter the secondary education. We could not do that over the past 5 to 7 years, and now the current administration is looking at ending it. It's a welcoming news. I would want to see how they walk the talk. We want to see how they would implement this. Already, they are indicating some expansion in Category C schools, which is very welcoming. Initially, when the minister spoke, he was talking about 10 Category B schools and then 10 category C schools. But now in the budget, we are hearing 30 category C schools to be upgraded, 10 category B schools to be upgraded, and then some category A schools will also be upgraded. This is very welcoming, and I think that if they follow through with what they are planning to do in terms of secondary school infrastructure, we will be able to bring the double track to an end.
The disbursement is the most important aspect of it, to ensure that this is actually done. You see, and that's where you, as civil society, also come in, and we, the media, are all playing that oversight role, demanding accountability to ensure that what is said that will be done is actually done. You
exactly.
Look at and that's why I was asking about, in terms of that role of accountability, what you are going to be doing, because yes, you've lauded government, but beyond that, then what?
Yeah, we would have to follow through to ensure that there's budget credibility in terms of disbursement. We would have to follow through to ensure that the schools that are supposed to be selected are schools that really need that kind of help. That is why I said this year's budget also try to fulfill some equity principles. We would have to do the hard work to track these promises to ensure that the money is disbursed and disbursed on time. That is very, very important, so that we'll be able to see a drastic change in terms of infrastructure at the secondary school front. So the only thing we can do is to follow through, to constantly remind the Minister of Finance to release funds to the Ministry of Education to monitor the implementation process and ensure that these aspirations, these promises, these plans are brought to fruition, and the Ghanaian student will be the ultimate beneficiary.
There's one other aspect as well. One of the promises, the 404-unit teacher quarters in this 2026 budget, which will provide decent housing for 1,600 teachers in deprived areas, supporting teacher retention and improving learning as well. This is long overdue. This is not the first time, in fact, a housing scheme has been captured in the budget. If you recall, it's been recurring in a number of budgets in the past. How do you want to see this done differently?
Yeah, first and foremost, I think the presidents have indicated that they are not going to construct any new schools that would not have attached to it a teacher's bungalow. I think these buildings are coming out from the 200 GHS and the 200 primary schools that are going to be constructed. And going by the president's words, then it means that these schools would have a corresponding bungalows attached to it. Laudable idea. Again, we will need to follow through to ensure that these are implemented. And this would have a very profound impact on rural education, and we are hoping that they really go by this. In fact, if you look at the NGOs that continue to provide education in our rural settings, you will see that anytime they build the schools, they build the teachers' bungalow. So you go to most of these places where NGOs have built schools, you see nice building for the teachers. And I think that government, with its power, in terms of resources, should be able to even do better than these NGOs. So it is something that is possible. We should follow through. We should remind the Ministry of Education, the Minister of Finance, to ensure that there is transparency in the award of contracts, and also ensure that the monies are disbursed on time for the contractors to kickstart the building of these teachers' quarters, for our teachers to also have some peace of mind to deliver their mandates. Of course, if you have these buildings there, the teachers will stay. They will not leave these places where there's teacher attrition, and it is going to improve education delivery in rural Ghana.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Peter Patanti, thank you for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. And that's what you saw on the screen. And we're going to put that back on the screen. And it gives a breakdown of what we've been talking about. Dr. Peter Patanti is the director of the Institute for Education Studies. 2 million monodecks will be provided, new textbooks for 4 million basic learners, school feeding expansion. Government will build for each 200 kgs primary, junior high schools. And that would also have bungalows. And as you did here, Dr. Ante referenced exactly what the president talked about. No school, new school buildings will be built without teachers' bungalows. So this is also going to address the issue about teacher motivation and accommodation. And it's one that we'll keep an eye on as well. But let's take our eyes just off a bit from the budget. But that's coming up next. The Interior Minister has announced the rolling out of major reforms to the police, prisons, and immigration enlistments, introducing online recruitment, new age limits as well. That's what's happening right now. And as the latest development, Alhaj Mohammed Muntaka Mubarak earlier today at a press conference did indicate that government has raised the age limit for regular recruits into the Ghana Police Service, Immigration Service, Prison Service, and the National Fire Service to 30 years. Speaking to the media, Interior Minister Mohammed Muntaka Mubarak also revealed that the age limit for artisan recruits has also been increased to 35 years. Take a look.
And professionals and even ordinary recruits will move the age to 30. And for craftsmen, for the first time, probably for a very long period of time, for the first time in many, many years. Now we are focusing on craftsmen, where we are looking for electricians, we are looking for painters, we are looking for carpenters, we are looking for fitters, and what have you. And the qualification there, BEC, MVTI, City and Girls, and the others. So broaden the base, and the age is 35.
Richard Kumado is a security analyst. Kumado, let's start off with this age review that has been announced now for police, immigration, fire service, 30 years for regular recruits, 35 years for artisans as well. A welcome development, you would say?
If you remember, the Minister of Interior set up a committee to review the recruitment process into the security agencies in this country. Then I believe the age should be one of the recommendations of that report. And even though we did not see the report publicly, I want to believe that the criteria where the age became an issue and it came into the political fray, it would have been one of them. But I think the age is just one of the criteria you have to meet in order to get into the security agencies. Then again, whether is it a welcoming news or not, society is dynamic, things have been evolved, law enforcement itself has been involved. If you take the military as a peculiar place out of this, and you take the BNI as a peculiar place, I think this should have been, if it is discussed with the law enforcement officers involved, the police, the prison, immigration, and fire, and the officers have agreed with it, I think they can manage it. Other than that, we need to streamline our recruitment processes in a manner that it doesn't degenerate into politics.
That's the watchword there. But all surviving victims of the Wednesday's military recruitment stampede, Mr. Kumado, have automatically qualified for the military recruitment, and the family members who lost their loved ones are also to provide replacements for their wards. They are also getting automatic qualification for the military recruitment. And this is what the Deputy Minister in charge of Defense, Ernest Bojajemfi, said to the media earlier today. Take a look.
These 6 young female potential recruits had made it. They were qualified to the stage where we were to inspect their documentations and also do body selection in order to assess their fitness level. And for the family to lose them under the circumstances as we have, His Excellency the President has directed that we give the opportunity to the family to replace all these 6 dead persons. Of course, we have to check their fitness level, how they are healthy, how they qualify to be with the Ghana Armed Forces. Not only that, His Excellency the President has also directed that all injured persons involved in this tragic incident be also given the automatic qualification to be recruited for the Ghana Armed Forces. At any point they recover and our health professionals assess their suitability to be with the Ghana Armed Forces.
So that's another intervention as a result of the stampede. So now all the surviving victims, automatic qualification, and unfortunately those who lost their lives would have some replacement from their families. Mr. Kumado, this is the announcement from the Deputy Defense Minister earlier today. I mean, how would this, as it were, address the specific concerns that we've had that led to this stampede in the first place?
I think as a nation, we haven't done well with our recruitment procedure for many years. The procedure itself is not giving us the results we needed in the 21st century. And we needed to be a bit more strategic and creative about it. To the families who have lost their daughters, I wouldn't think, in as much as this looked very promising and an opportunity to serve your nation, they would have taken it lightly at all. And as a people, I think we are a bit more reactive instead of being proactive. And that is a major, major issue we would have resolved going forward. With the promise of the president, to the extent that these guys are injured, and we are talking about the peculiarity of the military and the rigorous nature of some of the activities they will take them through, I will not be surprised if the injured will be asked to serve as a civilian employee of the Ghana Armed Forces instead of going to the front line. You don't build an army that has weak legs and weak hearts. You might be creating problems for the front line because the front line is very rigid and is very frantic, and they do several things over there. So let's see the way it plays out and the degree of injury and whether the 5 people in the ICU will come back successfully. It's an avoidable situation, and I feel very sad that in Greater Accra we recorded it. Then, when you go to the Volta region, we haven't had any casualties at all. And I think Greater Accra should have benchmarked some of the best practices put in place at the Volta region when it came to the military recruitment.
Well, there's a number of things the Interior Minister talked about, that to avoid overcrowding, security services will conduct their screening exercise in turns. And so they will have 10 to 15 centers to be set up across the country for screening of security service applicants. And then also you would have, if it's 1,000 a day, 500 in the morning, 500 in the afternoon. Those are the measures, at least in the interim.
No, definitely, that would have streamlined some of the process a bit, but it's not quite different from what they have done so far. On the 1st of November, the BNI, my former place, we wrote the aptitude test. Many years when I joined, we have streamlined the process, we rehearse it, we go through it almost every year, and that is why we are intelligence officers. And all other agencies, if they are finding it difficult benchmarking some of the best practice across the group, they should just benchmark what the BNI does. But particularly the police, I think my uncle, Tete Christian Yehonu, having worked with the police for many years and having been in charge of operations in the strategic manner it is, police stations are all over the country. And I don't think the police in particular will have the high levels of disappointment the Ghana Armed Forces had. So for the police, I'm so sure they will get it through. Let's see the way the others will follow. But then there's a critical issue here. If people form lines, and we are saying that when they get to the place 11:55, we are afraid of stampede, and we will not be proactive enough as law enforcement officers to create the lines for them and set the place apart for them to know what to do. I want to say that for law enforcement officers, one of the things people pride ourselves in is punctuality. And so if my section is starting at 12 o'clock, then presumably it is reasonable that I get to the place 11:30 or 11:40, 11:50 to cool down a little bit before I start the process. Because if I am late, then that may also go against me. This is one of the things I have always been speaking about, and I have urged the heads of law enforcement agencies to be proactive and take the decisions they want to take. Now, how it is going, if they get it wrong, then politics comes in, and politicians are going to take the lead, and we don't want to hear them complain in the public space again. But by and large, let's see the way it is unfolds. I can only wish them well and say that let the police get it right, and the rest will follow suit. And we will have to go through this thing every year without any problems on our hands.
Well, Mr. Commodore, thank you for joining us. Richard Commodore is a security analyst joining us here on Ghana Tonight. We're back shortly after this quick break. Stay with us. The Minister for Lands and Natural Resources has handed over 230 water pumps seized from illegal miners to the Ministry of Agriculture. The pumps will be distributed to farmers to enhance irrigation and boost food production. Here's the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources earlier today.
He recounted the challenges they are having with food production, agricultural production, the complaints from farmers. Minister, we can assure you that we are not going to rest. With the support of the security forces, with NIMO's support, with the collaboration we are having, until we rid all the bad guys who have decided that the only way they will find their money is to kill us. We are going into this year very sure that for those who have decided that they want to destroy our water bodies and forest reserves, get ready, we are coming after you. And the message is clear. If you see NIMOs in every corner, try messing up with them. Try it. The whole force of the Ghana Armed Forces and the Ghana Police Service will be brought to bear. Because we mean what we say. And so I'm very proud where we are going. I believe that so much has happened this year. And the reason why you are seeing what you are seeing is that we are hitting those illegal miners, the places that it hurts. And we are not stopping.
Well, the Catholic Bishops' Conference has also been talking about galamsey as illegal mining, while they commend government for the recent interventions with NIMOs and then also the crackdown on some illegal mining sites. They say a lot more needs to be done. Here's the Catholic Bishops' Conference earlier today.
So while we acknowledge government's efforts so far, for instance, in establishing the National Anti-Illegal Mining Operations Secretariat, NIMOS, the persistent devastation of galamsey compels us to call upon our dear President to announce even more radical action against this menace, this canker, this cancer, including the declaration of a state of emergency.
Well, so that's the call by the Catholic Bishops' Conference. Thank you so much for staying with us here on Ghana Tonight, but make a date with me tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. here on TV3 and on 3FM 92.7 for The Key Point. As we unpack the 2026 budget, the policies and the matters arising, the Finance Minister and Acting Defense Minister, Dr. Kasiela Toforsing, is my guest for the first half of the program. So make a date. We start exactly 7 a.m. The conversation starts here on TV3 and on 3FM on a number of radio stations across the country, and also on the Voice of London radio in the heart of the city of London. And the next half, we would also have a conversation on Paul Bafoboni, new Chief Justice. What can he do in 1 year? Helicopter crash report published, lessons for the future. And this unfortunate incident, the stampede that killed 6 people. We have a number of people joining us. Martin Pebble, Nelson Roxon Dapiamekwa, Kofi Bentel, also Dr. George Domfe. We have also Professor Godfrey Bobkin, Dr. Joshua Zato, and Professor Ransford Jampo. And also, we would have a security analyst joining us. On behalf of the rest of the team, we do thank you for making a date with us. Join me tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. I am Alfred Ocansey. Have a good night.
Ghana Tonight is brought to you by
Flamingo Paint, superior durability.
La